we chatted a bit. I obviously, we talked about the book. We talked about the visit. He was very pleased, the president, with how it had gone. And he talked about how the king's a great guy. He talked to me about that before. He's a huge fan. He's a passionate royalist. He's a huge Anglophile. He's half British, loves the king. Talked about William, said he's going to be a great king, right? And very enthusiastic about the Princess of Wales, concerned about her health, but keen to see her back, and said what a wonderful job she's doing. And then he said, can Harry make a comeback? And I said, I don't think on a present form that's likely. And he went, boy, that wife of his, and then proceeded to say that the Duchess of Sussex, he said, what she's done to that guy, and sort of rolled his eyes. The conversation then moved on again. But it was the fact that I think he felt the Sussexes had sort of had thrown it all away. He was in very upbeat form about the visit. I mean, yeah, obviously this is a big deal for Britain, this visit, but it's a big deal for the president as well. He is, as I say, he's a very keen royalist. He looks back on his meetings with Elizabeth II. We were looking through the book there, and he was looking at some of the pictures, and there's a picture in there of the last portrait ever painted of her, and it hangs on the wall at Mar-a-Lago because he liked it so much. He liked her so much.
Yes.
So, this is an incredible diplomatic tool we have in the monarchy. I mean, I heard earlier one of your Lib Dem guests saying that, the visit shouldn't have gone ahead. I mean, this visit has been the best thing for British diplomacy and the transatlantic alliance in an age.
Yes.
And when you heard the president's words, both his speech of welcome and also his speech at the state dinner, we're just talking in the most effusive terms about the debt that America owes to Britain for what he called its moral courage and for its sort of values. I mean, these are deep, deep thoughts. And obviously the King's speech to Congress, that was extraordinary. 12 standing ovations. I was in the room for that. Both sides of the House standing up at different points to applaud different bits, but then everyone else followed suit. You can't deliver this sort of soft power in any other way. As we know, our politicians can't do it. Trump has no interest really in seeing any of them. And so I was just a lucky sort of beneficiary of all this sort of royal goodwill. So that's how I ended up going into the White House and handing him a book. And then, as you said, he delivered a very nice review online. I encourage your viewers.
It's the best review. It's the best review online you could ever get.
There's something deeply unsettling about the way certain corners of the media continue to talk about Prince Harry and Meghan Sussex. Not just criticism is fair game, but obsessive, bitter, and at times disturbingly personal. And if you've been paying attention, you'll know exactly what I mean. Because what we're witnessing right now isn't just commentary. It's a narrative that's being pushed again and again, that Meghan is the problem, that Harry is somehow lost, and that the only acceptable ending to this story is for him to crawl back into the royal fold, alone, apologetic, and stripped of everything he's built since leaving. And honestly, that says far more about the people pushing that narrative than it does about Harry and Meghan. Let's talk about it. Recently, a segment on GB News featured a conversation that, on the surface, sounded like just another royal gossip roundup. You know the type. Praise for the monarchy, glowing words about the king, admiration for William and Kate, and then the inevitable pivot. Harry, Meghan. And suddenly the tone changes. According to the segment, there was a conversation with a high-profile political figure, someone described as a passionate royalist, someone who admires the king, respects William, and is eager to see Kate return to public duties. All very polished, all very diplomatic, until Harry's name came up. Then came the question, can Harry make a comeback? And the answer? A dismissive no. But it didn't stop there. The conversation reportedly veered into criticism of Meghan, eye rolls, loaded comments, The familiar suggestion that she's somehow done something to Harry, as though he's not a grown man capable of making his own choices. And this is where we need to pause. Because this framing, this constant portrayal of Meghan as the villain and Harry as the victim, is not new. It's been recycled, repackaged and repeated so many times that it's practically become a script. But here's the problem. It's not grounded in reality. Let's break this down. Harry didn't just wake up one day and decide to walk away from royal life on a whim. This was a decision shaped by years of experience, years of scrutiny, pressure, and, by his own account, a system that he felt wasn't protecting his family. We've heard him speak about it. We've seen the interviews. We've read the memoir. Whether you agree with his perspective or not, one thing is clear. This was not a passive man being led by his wife. This was an active choice. And yet the media narrative refuses to grant him that agency. Why? Because it's easier to blame Meghan. It's easier to paint her as the disruptor, the outsider, the one who took him away, rather than confront the possibility that Harry made a conscious decision to step back from an institution that no longer aligned with his values or priorities. And that brings us to the tweet that perfectly captures the frustration many people are feeling right now. As I said again and again, these people want Meghan dead, to disappear, and for Harry to come back on his knees. They are so delusional. Harry isn't coming back to become William and Kate's workhorse. Strong words, but are they really that far off? Because when you look at the tone of certain media coverage, you have to ask, what exactly is the desired outcome here? Is it reconciliation or is it submission? Because those are two very different things. Reconciliation would mean acknowledging both sides, recognizing that relationships are complex and allowing space for growth, boundaries and change. But that's not what's being pushed. What's being pushed is the idea that Harry should return, but only on very specific terms, terms that involve silence, compliance, and a return to the exact role he stepped away from. In other words, not a reconciliation, but a reset. And here's the reality, that's not going to happen. Harry has built a life outside of the monarchy. He has a family, projects, partnerships, and a platform that allows him to speak on issues he cares about. Whether you agree with everything he's done or said is beside the point. He has autonomy. And autonomy is something the traditional royal system doesn't always accommodate easily. Now, let's talk about the other major theme in that GB News segment, the monarchy as a soft power tool. There was a lot of emphasis on how valuable royal visits are for diplomacy, how they strengthen alliances, how they create goodwill on the global stage. And yes, historically, that has been true. The monarchy has often been positioned as a symbol of continuity, tradition, and national identity. Royal visits can generate headlines, attract attention, and create moments of cultural exchange. But here's the question we should be asking in 2026. At what cost? Because while the institution may benefit from this soft power, the individuals within it often bear the weight of intense scrutiny, rigid expectations, and limited personal freedom. Harry has spoken about this openly. He's talked about the pressure, the lack of support, and the impact it had on his mental health. So when commentators praise the monarchy's diplomatic value while dismissing the personal experiences of those who have stepped away, it creates a disconnect. It suggests that the institution's image matters more than the well-being of the individuals within it. And that's a conversation we need to have more honestly. Because the world is changing. Audiences are more informed, more critical, and less willing to accept one-sided narratives. People are asking questions, challenging assumptions, and looking beyond the headlines. And that's why this ongoing attempt to frame Harry and Meghan's story in such a narrow, negative way feels increasingly out of step. It's not just about them, it's about what they represent. They represent choice. They represent stepping away from expectations that no longer serve you. They represent the idea that you can redefine your role, your identity, and your path, even if it means facing backlash. And that's powerful, which is precisely why it's so threatening to certain narratives. Because if Harry can walk away and build something different, it challenges the idea that the traditional system is the only viable path. And if Meghan can thrive despite relentless criticism, it challenges the notion that public opinion is the ultimate authority. Now let's address something directly. Criticism of public figures is fair. It comes with the territory. No one is above scrutiny, and Harry and Meghan have made decisions that people will naturally have opinions about. But there's a line. There's a difference between critique and obsession. There's a difference between analysis and agenda. And when coverage consistently leans into personal attacks, exaggerated narratives, and selective framing, it stops being about accountability and starts being about control. Control over the story, control over public perception, and ultimately control over how these individuals are remembered. But here's the thing, that control is slipping. Because people are no longer consuming media in the same way. They're cross-referencing, fact-checking, and forming their own opinions. And increasingly, those opinions are more nuanced than the narratives being pushed. So when a segment suggests that Harry's future lies in returning to the monarchy under certain conditions, many viewers are asking a simple question. Why? Why would he go back to a system he chose to leave? Why would he abandon the life he's built? Why would he return on terms that seem designed to diminish his independence? The answer is, he wouldn't. And that's not delusion, that's reality. Harry isn't coming back to be anyone's workhorse. He's not stepping back into a role that no longer aligns with who he is today. And Meghan? She's not disappearing. Despite years of criticism, she continues to move forward, working on projects, raising her family, and maintaining a presence that clearly still resonates with millions of people around the world. So perhaps the real question isn't whether Harry will return. Perhaps the question is why some people need him to. Why the idea of him living independently outside of the royal framework is so difficult to accept. And why Meghan in particular continues to be positioned as the obstacle rather than acknowledged as his partner. Because until we start asking those questions, we're just going to keep seeing the same narrative play out on repeat. Different segment, same script, different headline, same message, but the audience is changing. And with that change comes a shift in perspective. A willingness to question, a refusal to accept oversimplified stories, and an understanding that the truth is often more complex than what's presented on screen. So the next time you see a segment like this, take a step back. Ask yourself what's being said and what's being implied. Consider whose perspective is being centered and whose is being dismissed. Because once you start looking at it through that lens, the pattern becomes clear. And once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. If you made it this far, you already know this conversation isn't going away anytime soon. So make sure you're part of it. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join this growing community where we break down the headlines, challenge the narratives, and keep it real. Every single time. Because the story isn't over, not even close.